Olivia studying political science.
And hi, I'm Grace. I'm studying history. We are here from Hope Volleyball to talk to you guys about the water cycle today. Woo! Yay, water cycle.
Okay, so you're going to need two things for our activity today. The first is a piece of paper, and the second is a pencil. And the first thing we're going to have you do is think about at least 5 places that you know water exists in our world.
Some things that we came up with during that time were the water that we drink, lakes, rivers, oceans, puddles, rain, clouds, and snow. Those are all places that we see water in our world. And the water cycle is super important because obviously the water is all around us all the time. So it's really important to understand how it works in the world and how it surrounds us and moves throughout our world. So before we even talk about a cycle of water, we need to figure out what kind of states water is in all the time. So it can be in the form of a liquid, a solid, and a gas. The way that we see liquid is the way we often think about water. The water we drink, the water in a river, the water in a lake. In a solid form, a lot of times that looks like snow or ice. So when water is frozen, it is turned into a solid. Then water can also be in a gas form, and this is what happens when water is heated up. And so you can't really see the water, but there's water particles around in the air floating all the time.
When we talk about the water cycle, we first want to talk about what it means to even be in the process of a cycle. So a cycle doesn't have a specific start and it doesn't have a specific end either. So the point is that water moves throughout our world in a constant process that never stops.
So now we're going to put those two things together. We're going to put water and cycles together to make the water cycle. So we actually created a water cycle model to show you guys and explain before our activity where you get to recreate the water cycle for yourself. So this is the water cycle. So there's some really big words here, but I'll explain them, I promise. So like Olivia said, there isn't a start or an ending. So where I start doesn't have to be where the water is starting, because it's always going. So it's not really a start or stop. So where a person starts explaining it is kind of in the middle of it, because every place is the middle of it. So I've got my sky, my ground, I've got a little lake, got the sun, some clouds, and I'm gonna start with the water in the sky. And you see clouds all the time, but I don't know if you know this, but this is all just condensed water that's collected in the clouds. So all of this water is all stuck together, which is condensation. And when it gets heavy enough, it'll rain, which obviously you know rain, and that's called precipitation. So when that happens as a liquid, the water comes down to earth through precipitation and collects on the ground. And sometimes it collects on the surface of the earth, which is the ground, but sometimes it runs off of the earth into an ocean or a lake. And it collects there. Obviously, there's a ton of water there. And then when the sun is out, it heats up the water, and some of that water evaporates, which is the process of turning water from a liquid into a gas, and that moves up to the sky and in the air. And then once that's all collected together through condensation, the whole process continues on.
Next thing we're going to do is we're going to each draw our own water cycles. So how you're going to start, if you want to do it like me, is you're going to draw yourself a little circle here, which means the same thing almost as a cycle, which I drew little arrows so that we can draw each of the 3 stages of our cycle. Now that we've given you some time, I'm going to show you the first thing that I drew. So for condensation, I drew some clouds, just like Grace was talking about. So condensation represents where water collects, all the water particles come together in the clouds and they get really heavy. So that brings us to our next phase, which is precipitation. So let me show you my little drawing. You can see coming from my clouds over here, there are rain droplets, which is precipitation. So as I said, when the water gets heavy in the clouds, it eventually falls down to the earth in a liquid form, rain or precipitation. Our next stage is evaporation. So as you can see, the rain comes down on this side. It eventually piles up into the lakes, which I've shown over here with my poorly drawn waves. Hopefully you guys are better at drawing than I am. Then, as you can see up here, I have an arrow, which is orange to show how the water heats up, and it evaporates. It goes from liquid form to gas form and makes its way up into our atmosphere and eventually back up into the clouds at our first stage of condensation.
I hope you guys learned a lot about the water cycle today and had fun doing the activity of making your own water cycle. See you guys. Bye.